Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened last week. Monday, U.S. markets are higher, lifted by U.S. tech companies and positive U.S.-China trade development. Tuesday, U.S. stocks were higher on positive earnings from a lot of companies, including Coca-Cola and United Technologies. U.S. stocks fall on Wednesday, while NASDAQ and the Dow hit a record high, even though we had a situation where Trump announced the antitrust investigation, formal antitrust investigation. We had bleak earnings from industrial giants like Caterpillar and Boeing. Obviously Boeing, because, they don't want to make planes that actually work properly. Exacerbated concerns about the slowing global economy that have obviously affected the markets this year. Dow and broader stock markets were negative on Thursday after the Dow and the NASDAQ had their worst one-day percentage drops in months. There's a lot of missed expectations leading stocks to a sell-off and also drag the market down with it. On Friday, record highs for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ with strong earnings from Google and Twitter. And overall for the week, the markets were positive. The Dow was up 0.14%, the S&P 500 up 1.65%, and the NASDAQ was up 2.26%. Overseas market news, China launches the latest bid. My chair dropped for a second. Hold on. Let me get back on my channel here. China launched a new stock exchange called the Star Market to be able to compete with the NASDAQ. If you guys know, the NASDAQ is mostly high-tech stocks. And this is less than a year after the president of China, Xi Jinping, announced that it was going to happen. And they've gained 140% its first day, even though it kind of went down the next few days. European markets are overall higher as well. The DAX from Germany is one of the biggest winners, 1.31%. The Euronext went up 1.48%. Latin American markets are mostly lower. The Mexican exchange is down 2.29%, while the Argentine Merval is up 4.54%. Both of those are the biggest winners and losers. African and Middle Eastern markets mostly lower. Biggest loser being Saudi Arabia at 2.44%. Asia and Australian markets are mostly lower as well. The Philippines went down 1.05%. Indonesia went down 2.09%. And Australia 1.37%. Shout out to all my traders in the Philippines. We had our first event this week. Super excited about that. And Bitcoin losses for the week. Not a lot of news this week for Bitcoin in the crypto space. Down 4.91% and went down to $9,842.82. Financial and banking news. Trump says that there is an existing agreement for the 2-year federal budget deal, which is, if you guys remember, we had that big scandal where they didn't want to make a deal and it went on for months. The government needs to reach a federal borrowing limit deal by August, because that's when the current one expires. The U.S. administration as well is ruling out intervening in markets about lowering the U.S. dollar's value. It's part of the reason why the dollar actually went up last week, even though that Trump is concerned about other countries actually weakening their currencies to compete better against the United States. Germany's biggest bank, Deutsche Bank, had a loss of $3.5 billion in Q2 as they have a radical overhaul of the bank and try to returning them back to profit. The ECB, which is the Central Bank of Europe, prepared the markets for more monetary easing on Thursday. There was emerging market borrowers loading up with euro-denominated debt, I should say, in anticipation of more deeply negative interest rates and protracted easy money from the ECB. That puts a lot more downward pressure on the euro, and the euro on that news fell to a 2-year low against the dollar to 1.11. If you guys want to travel to Europe, I think you might want to think about going now, because euro is going to be going down a little bit. Commodities, crude oil is higher. The U.S. crude is up 0.75%. International Brent is 0.89% higher. Overall, oil rallies is due to the situation with the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf with Iran. If you guys remember, oil tankers were seized. Now the UK is going to accompany their tankers with warships to make sure that there's not any more problems with Iran or quote-unquote anybody else in that region. And if you guys don't know, 20% of all global crude supply passes through that lane. And if you guys don't know, so picture this as a landmass right here, right? So this is, for example, Saudi Arabia. Qatar is right here on the water. We have United Arab Emirates, where Dubai is, right around here. And then this water goes like this and up. And then we have kind of a landmass like that, which is Iran up here. So what happens is a lot of these tankers have to go through the water. And then right when they get to this tip, they're dangerously close to the limits that we have established internationally of what a country's limit in the water is in terms of their I forgot the word in English, their legal right, their there's a certain amount of miles. So that's basically the problem, essentially, right? So Iran wants to cause trouble because of what the U.S. doing to them with the sanctions. Now the U.K. is going to give them warships accompanying them as well, and the U.K. is calling on allies to make a new maritime alliance to protect all commercial ships. So essentially, that's why the oil has been rising this week because of this tensions. And obviously, people are scared that oil's not going to be able to get through. If it's 20% of oil, that means that there could be a serious problem with an oil glut if all of a sudden, tensions arise in that region. There's a lot of tankers as well offloading millions of barrels of oil in Chinese ports, creating a hoard of crude in the world's largest energy importer, China, being put as what's known as a bonded shortage. This is technically not violating U.S. sanctions. It is not crossing local customs or showing up in China's import data. It will, however, push crude prices far lower when in the future these supplies are finally tapped. Silver hits a 13-month high. If you guys remember, I did that video about how I'm trading silver right now. I had a beautiful, beautiful run. I think I put it in the last week's recap. If you guys are listening on the podcast, which is available on iTunes and also Spotify, go on YouTube and check a look at the chart that I did last week so you guys can see that. There's an analyst from Commerzbank, which is a huge bank in Germany, saying that there's a lowest level of relation of gold to silver since 1992, and he puts a year-end forecast of silver at $18 an ounce, and he's saying that silver is actually a better investment than gold. I wonder who else was saying that. Only for educational purposes. I'm not a trading advisor. We don't trade people's money, just, putting it out there for your education. Silver's up 6% in 2019 versus gold's gain of 11%. And precious metals are mixed for the week. Gold is down 0.47% at 1,419, and silver's up 1.04% at 1,645. In political news, Wednesday, Boris Johnson officially replaced Theresa May as the Prime Minister of the UK. The winning party was the Conservative Party. Remember that he has a hard date of when he wants to get the UK out of Brexit. There's already been a situation where the EU has scoffed at Boris Johnson's demands to renew the negotiations. So that's probably going to go very well, and he received over 92,000 votes, whereas the defeated Jeremy Hunt only received just over, close to 43,000. Spain's acting socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez admitted defeat on Thursday's bid to win that. He failed to finalize a deal, which means that they're most likely going to have elections by the end of this year. In economic news, the U.S. economy has been growing for 121 months, which is now the longest expansion on records since the records began in 1854. That's just over 10 years. Can never come to an end, right? Since the beginning of the Republic of the United States, I got to give a shout out to Jim Rogers because I got this from him, one of the best traders in history. The U.S. economy, since the beginning of the Republic of the United States, has had an economic contraction every 4 to 6 months. So we've had the longest ever now in over 10 years, but definitely not going to happen. No, next 2 years, no. Everything's going to be great. Don't worry about it. Go and buy whatever you want. I'm sure you guys can hear the sarcasm in my voice as I've been warning you guys about what's going to come in the next few years. U.S. home sales fell by more than expected in June. There's been a persistent shortage of properties pushed prices to a record high. The new orders of key U.S.-made capital goods surged in June by 1.9%. The demand for machinery increasing the most by nearly 18 months, but it is probably not going to change the expectations of business investment, which contracted further in quarter two. The U.S. GDP grew by 2.1%. Quarter one was 3.1%. It's the higher than expected 1.8% economic growth forecasted by analysts. In corporate news, the best restaurant in the United States, Chipotle, says that its same-store sales in the last 13 months grew by 10% in quarter two, pushing their revenue up by 13.2% to $1.4 billion. Messaging service Snapchat added 15% to its stock on Wednesday as they reportedly added 13 million daily users in quarter two. The total audience now is above 200 million, brings an end to the long period of slow growth. U.S. Federal Trade Commission agreed to a settlement of $5 billion fine to Facebook after significant allegations of mishandling of user privacy. Amazon reported a profit of $2.6 billion in quarter two, up slightly from quarter two in 2018, well below its record profit of quarter one of $3.6 billion, and it ends a streak of 4 straight quarters of record profits as they've invested heavily in $800 million in expediting deliveries. Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, also had a great quarter at $38.9 billion in revenue for quarter two, way above analyst projections, up 19% in quarter two 2018. And they also announced a new share buyback of $25 billion. The IMF is saying that global trade expanded at just 0.5% for the first time for the first quarter of 2019. It's the slowest year-on-year pace of growth since 2012. And in some good news for the trade war, for the first high-level face-to-face trade negotiations, U.S. Trade Representative Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin are set to travel to China next Monday to be able to go ahead and have negotiations. Remember, China is the second biggest economy in the world. The United States is the biggest economy in the world for now. I mentioned to you guys about Boris Johnson becoming the UK Prime Minister. The UK government has already rejected 3 times the agreement made by Europe, so we should definitely have a few fireworks there. In technology, Samsung is going to finally start selling its foldable phone in September, only in select countries after a 2-month delay of all the problems that they had trying to sell it before. In international events, Hong Kong, there's a shock about what's going on there because investors are thinking that there may be a breakdown of law and order as there was riots everywhere and there were men in masks that assaulted pro-democratic protesters as well. First time that this kind of violence is seen since the ongoing anti-extradition demonstrations. China is warning that it's ready for war if Taiwan declares its independence. I already told you guys about that situation, I believe last week or the week before. They're accusing the U.S. of undermining global stability and denouncing the arms sales to Taiwan from the U.S. In unusual markets this week, Marvel's Avengers Endgame has become the best-selling film ever, topping 2009 Avatar's, which they now own. They've earned over $18.2 billion at the global box office after buying Marvel for $2 or $3 billion, if I'm not mistaken, in 2009. If you guys want to look up the exact amount, go ahead and look it up. And I did, but I do believe I missed some news here, the investment news. Let me go ahead and go back and give you guys that to make sure that you guys have it. In the investment news, the U.S. Justice Department is launching a formal antitrust review of the nation's biggest tech companies. It could be wide-ranging and could be conducted over numerous companies. A lot of people suspect that it could go against Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, even though a lot of firms weren't named. France announced, remember, the digital tax on the large U.S. tech companies. So now Trump is also saying that he's going to place taxes on French products, most likely wine because of that. Apple is in advanced talks to buy Intel smartphone modem business. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba is going to allow U.S. small businesses to list their stuff on Alibaba to be able to go ahead and fend off the other competitors in the e-commerce market, especially, for example, Amazon. U.S. Department of Justice announced that they're going to approve the $26 billion merger between T-Mobile and Sprint. It's going to combine it's the third and fourth largest mobile phone carriers into one, and they're going to have over 80 million U.S.-based customers. And Japanese conglomerate SoftBank is expecting to raise $108 billion in the new Vision Fund 2, and they're getting money from Apple, Foxconn, and Microsoft. They're planning to invest over $38 billion. A lot of money sloshing around. And Singapore seized 9.7 tons of elephant ivory, a record haul by authorities. The estimated value of this haul is about $12.9 million. It came from, unfortunately, 300 African elephants headed to Vietnam through Singapore through the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Europe is getting record temperatures all over Europe. Germany is seeing all-time highs as well. Residents of Paris, London, and Brussels saw temperatures higher than Cairo and Singapore. Imagine that. And Indonesia is planning to close this eastern island of Komodo to the public next year to be able to go ahead and provide a little bit of protection, let's say, to the largest lizard in the world, the Komodo dragon. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you next week.
I don't feel wise, I don't feel something. I wanna hear